Baldur's Gate 3 is a fantasy turn-based CRPG developed and published by Larian Studios. It is set in the universe of Dungeons and Dragons taking place in the Forgotten Realms. A CRPG is an old-school style RPG that places emphasis on stats and gear over outright skill, and appeals to anyone interested in the fantasy RPG genre or a tactical style game. The game is a direct sequel to Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, which were developed by BioWare back in the late 90s and early 2000s. Both were real-time with pause CRPGs over turn-based. Larian Studios have a history of experience working with passion on their own original IP, Divinity Original Sin 1 and 2. I'll be playing Baldur's Gate 3 on the PC version. The mechanics of Baldur's Gate 3 stem from a modified version of 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, elaborated on by Larian to better translate a tabletop game into a video game. If your character wishes to do something, they must pass an ability or skill check where they must roll a 20-sided dice called a d20, higher than the difficulty of the check. Characters are created with ability points that can assist this, adding a modifier to ability checks based on their stats. This adds a +1 for every 2 points above 10, or a +2 for skills they are proficient in. The type of gear your character can wear will also depend on your proficiencies and render you unable to use anything you are not proficient in. These proficiencies will come from your character's chosen race, background, or class, with the lattermost also dictating what spells and abilities your character can use. The dynamic of turn-based combat in Baldur's Gate 3 is constructed by using these dice rolls to determine initiative, accuracy, and damage for both the player and NPCs. A turn consists of an action where a character may attack or cast a spell, a bonus action to perform an offhand attack, drink a potion, or jump, and move speed determining how far a character may move. The higher level a character is, the more these limits change, offering the player a sense of progression and options to tackle harder encounters. The dynamic of conversation and exploration also uses these roles to determine persuasion in dialogue options, perception in seeing hidden things in the open world, and succeeding in sneaking and stealing for those less than lawful playthroughs. Through the scope of the MDA framework, these dynamics result in aesthetics, or a combination of reasons why the player will find this game fun, such as fantasy, where the player sees the game as make-believe, narrative, the game as a drama, discovery, where the game is uncharted territory, and submission, where players like to see the game as a pastime. Baldur's Gate 3 is a labyrinth of intertwining and connected stories combined of the main narrative with side quests, companion stories, and secondary character stories, all with player choice and consequences attached. The story takes the form of dialogues with NPCs where the player actively chooses which route to navigate through this labyrinth, starting with a journey to remove a tadpole mind flare in your brain and ending with anything from a premature explosion in Act 2 to world domination in Act 3. All the while, the game's well-rounded and recruitable characters share their story and motivations along the way, from vampires seeking vengeance to ex-killing machines wanting to go home. The player is given cutscenes throughout to show the consequences of their actions and choices made to this point. With all that being said, the player can make a choice of killing every NPC they can see, and the main quest can still continue. Credit to Larian Studios for accommodating these kinds of options.